There's so much narcissism around, and that it's not until you have really experienced it that you know what to look for or know the repercussions of it even.
To your point, is that a lot of people don't understand it until it happens to them. That's really the struggle, because believe it or not, even in this modern world, there's some people out there where it hasn't happened to them, or they're so good at justifying it that they don't want to see it, right? And so when a person who's going through it actually turns to maybe a friend who doesn't get it, they'll often get pushback, and people say, oh, that's just how they are. They're just intense. And this is not about intense. This is about something so abusive that cuts you to the core. It's an entirely different experience. And once people understand it, the only thing I've ever wanted for people is to not blame themselves, because that's what people do in these relationships. They blame themselves and say, maybe I'm not trying hard enough, and maybe I'm not this enough, and maybe I'm not that enough. So you're doing your part. You're being abused. You decide how you want to proceed.
I had a very painful pattern of being drawn to really big personality people who were really fun and edgy and just like, wow, like a shiny object. And then, when you're having fun with this kind of person and you're laughing all the time and they're really edgy, and you start to realize, oh my God, they're actually kind of mean to people, or they lie, or they do this. Now all of a sudden I get scared because I don't know how to back away.
The kinds of people we sort of idolize in our society really are often the noisy bullies, and we idolize people with a lot of money. And narcissistic people always have more money. And so if you say, I want to be a billionaire, in today's day and age, and more often than not saying, I want to be a narcissist. So it's the people we value. We don't value a teacher who knocks herself out to help kids who are in trouble learning. That's not our hero. Our hero is the person who has the jets and the rockets and all this nonsense. So part of it is what we value in our society.
I mean, I've been duped in my life with people, and I'm like, man, I feel like I'm usually a pretty good judge of character, and I can feel their energy or pick up maybe more cues than other people, but I've been there before.
So I have been there too. I've been taken. I've been taken. This is why I started this research. This was the height of my awkward stage, where I really trusted someone. I thought I was a pretty good judge of character. I had felt good vibes and good energy. However, there were red flags that I ignored. I had little hints about this person that I was like, that feeling,
Yeah, kind of like, oh, well,
yeah.
Or,
oh, yeah, oh, what? I'm sure that was fine. He was having a bad day.
So what is a narcissist? Okay. And then what are the types of narcissists?
So narcissistic or narcissism or narcissistic personalities are characterized by inconsistent or generally absent empathy, entitlement, grandiosity, arrogance, superficiality, egocentricity, being very selfish, chronically seeking validation and admiration, a need for a lot of control over a situation, a hypersensitivity to criticism, difficulty regulating emotion, especially when they're frustrated or disappointed, real challenges with intimacy in a close relationship. Their ability to have sort of the back and forth of a relationship is constrained by their need for their own needs to be met. So in other words, they almost view other people as conveniences to meet their needs.
I can go all the way back to friends in elementary school, to a babysitter that I once hired, to business associates back in the day, to like just there they are. And it wasn't until I had a massive issue happened with one of them that was super painful that made me go, holy shit, this is a pattern. This person has been showing up in your life since you were 9 years old, and you have not learned it. And now you have a very expensive and a very messy and a very awful situation to clean up with somebody that you couldn't draw boundaries with.
Traditionally, most of us think of the grandiose, what you're calling the overt narcissist. And grandiose narcissism is sort of the sort of big, extroverted, attention-seeking, look at me, I'm so great, I'm at the center of the party, I'm the coolest, I'm the best, constantly looking for the social media followers and likes, and that's that person. Another form of narcissism, and a lot of researchers believe that Overt or grandiose narcissism and covert narcissism aren't necessarily always two separate people, but they're two faces of the same coin. Covert narcissism is also called vulnerable narcissism, and it's characterized by all the stuff I talked about, but the way it shows is in a much more passive-aggressive, victimized way. So instead of just being in your face, you're so stupid, it's more like, oh God, everything comes so easy to you. Someone like me who actually does the work, nothing happens for me, but you just show up and you get money. Like, must be so nice to live in your little world. And so I'm like, I think I was just insulted, but I think at the same time, I also feel sorry for you. So I'm not sure what to feel right now. And they're masterful at that, maybe not intentionally. So when people are with covert narcissistic people, they're actually exhausted by the passive aggression. They wonder why they ruin every party they're brought to, but they also feel sorry for them. And they often think of the covert narcissist as being anxious or depressed more than they think of them as being narcissistic, because they're not the life of the party. Quite the opposite. They're kind of the sad hangdog person in the corner of the party who's angry at everybody and always looks like they're on the verge of getting into a bar fight. That's your covert narcissist.
As time went on, I kept ignoring the red flags. And of course, it ended up that he was completely lying to me, that so many of the things he had told me were completely false or had a tiny kernel of truth. And I gave him a couple of months of what I gave him my most intimate friendship, and I totally was lied to. 100% lied to.
The communal narcissist is the narcissist who gets their supply by ostensibly doing nice things for other people. They give people money. They do charitable stuff. Look at me, I'm rescuing an elephant. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But they want to be admired for it. And they get their admiration by doing nice things for other people. And they get angry at people if they don't feel like they're getting enough admiration for it. So everybody thinks they're a saint, but the people who maybe work with them or are in relationships with them say, oh my gosh, everyone's telling me I'm so lucky because they're so helpful, but they're such a mean person. There are malignant narcissists who almost feel psychopathic. They're very exploitative. They're very manipulative. They can be very callous, very cold. They almost feel dangerous. They have all the stuff of the grandiose narcissist, but with a much more like Machiavellian, like they know how to work a room, they know how to work a system. These are people who often get to the top of organizations. They're not quite psychopaths, which is sort of an entirely different kind of a thing out there, but they almost have that feel. Then there are the self-righteous narcissists who are super moral, and they're like, they almost feel really loyal, like they're sort of almost feel ride or die, but they're not really, because everything's about how moral and great they are, and there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do things, and they're very contemptuous of other people. They almost feel sort of snobby, and they're very judgy. And so people find them like, what is this? Like, this person is not very nice.
I hope you're not as stubborn as I am, because it took me 41 years to see the lesson about toxic behavior that I was attracted to and toxic behavior that I engaged in my own people pleasing and inability to draw a line and like distance myself or end relationships that really didn't work.
Gaslighting isn't something that happens once and you're all in, right? It's a grooming process. It happens over time. And it requires you to be in a relationship that's characterized by trust or some level of authority or expertise. And a new relationship's an interesting example of that, because if you're attracted to various elements of the person, how they look and who they are, and you really see that there's a possibility for a relationship, you want to trust them. And when you want to, or you already trust someone and they start gaslighting you, you don't go right to, they're gaslighting me. The first thing most people do when they're gaslighted is doubt themselves, like, maybe they're right. Maybe I am being too sensitive, or maybe I did read that situation wrong, or maybe I didn't put the keys there, or maybe that didn't happen, or maybe they weren't being inappropriate with that person. And that happens it's not happening once or twice. It's happening dozens and then hundreds of times. When a person's gaslighted, they lose a lot of their power in a situation because they're spending so much time saying, huh? What? And you start thinking like, maybe my memory's going, maybe I need to see a doctor, maybe I'm the one with a mental illness, maybe I'm the narcissist. People go there. Now all of your time is sort of almost trying to get your footing back. The gaslighter is controlling you more and more and more.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
a really insidious process. And then before you know it, what the gaslighter does, it's an interesting trick. Let's say a person finds their voice and it's like, okay, I've got this figured out. I watched one of Dr. Ramani's videos. I read something on gaslighting. I got this. And you say something like, you know what? Like, I don't like how you're talking to me, or this, I'm not comfortable with this. You know what the gaslighter will say? Maybe you're not feeling this relationship that more. I get it. Like, we've been drifting apart. And they start threatening leaving. They play into a fear that, ironically, even though narcissistic people and gaslighters don't like abandonment, they know it's the ultimate weapon. And now you're into the relationship 6, 9, 12 months, maybe if it's new, and you say, I don't want this to break up. I wanted us to have a talk. And so you're silenced once again, because you feel like if I push this conversation too much, they're going to feel like I'm pushing back on the relationship and they're criticized. And so maybe they're going to want out. So maybe I am making too big a deal out of this. And you start gaslighting yourself. And then before long, the person is almost just living in the gaslighted universe. They may give up on goals, aspirations. They may talk to people less. They may give up friendships. They may give up all kinds of things in their life to live in the universe that the gaslighter created. And so now, to the world, it looks like the two of you are exactly on the same page. You're not on the same page. You're almost like a cult member now. You've been totally brainwashed. And you're going along with the program, because otherwise you lose the relationship, which in my estimation would have been the best outcome. But a lot of people aren't ready for that. That's the process.
How can we tell if someone is trustworthy or not?
Okay, so let's talk about what I call red flags. So these are cues specifically that aren't so great. That when we look at the research, liars typically show them there were patterns, things that people did much more often on the lying statements than the true statements. So those are our red flags. They're things that our bodies tend to do in shame, deceit, guilt, and fear. So I'll go through a couple. These are the ones that I want you to kind of keep in your back pocket of, that was a little odd. Why did they do that? So the first one is actually a vocal cue, and it's the question inflection. So the question inflection is when we go up at the end of our sentence. So when we're saying something, it sounds like we're asking a question.
Now think about what the silent treatment ends up getting them, though. What does it get them? You end up breaking and often say, I'm sorry. And they get an apology, usually for something you didn't do wrong, and they hold the power. So one could even argue the silent treatment is sort of like a satellite of gaslighting, but it's extremely unhealthy. It's very different for a person to say, listen, I can feel the steam coming up in me. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go clear my head. I'm going to go do what I need to do. But then you come back and talk to the person. The silent treatment is punishment, and it's a manipulation.
When someone takes advantage of you, when someone lies to you, you feel wrong, right? Like, I felt so stupid and so dirty in a weird way, even though this other person had lied to me. So I'd just gone through this friendship breakup, and I was watching, this is in 2005, I was watching Larry King live interviewing Lance Armstrong. So Larry King asked him, have you ever doped? And Lance Armstrong says a bold-faced lie, I've never doped. And then he presses his lips into a hard line in a lip purse, where his lips disappeared and he pressed his mouth together. And I remember watching it going, what was that? So I began to look in the research. I didn't even have the name for it at the time. And I found this is a withholding cue. In nonverbal research, when someone is trying to keep something in, hold back, keep it together, they'll lip purse as if to say, don't give yourself away.
Something you're calling stonewalling. It's similar to the silent treatment, but it's a little bit of a variation on a theme. Stonewalling is, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. We're not doing this again. Or just walking out. Because what they've said is, I'm not even going to permit this discourse. It's not, and so now you're being told you don't get to bring up parts of your emotional world, a discomfort about something like that's all, no fly zones. So now your relationship has all these little sort of marks on it where you can't go there because we're not doing this. We're not talking about this. That's stonewalling. Now, some people argue that narcissists stonewall because a topic is about to bring up their shame. So they just say, I'm putting a stop to this. And there are people like John Gottman who talks about marriage and has done probably some of the most comprehensive research on this. And to him, stonewalling is one of sort of the, the death knells of a relationship. If you're engaging in stonewalling, you're sort of at the, you're really coming towards the end.
How many of us have started dating or sleeping with somebody that we knew we shouldn't have been dating or sleeping with? And then we keep going back, even though we knew that this is not a person that we should be with. And we turn into somebody else, reckoning with and this person is being sent into your life for a reason, because you have a pattern that you need to break. And so when you can identify those three things, kind of when in my life have I felt this way before? What are the circumstances or people I've been around? What am I doing that I can see contributes to me getting into these situations? Mm-hmm. And what is this trying to teach me? Mm-hmm. Oh. And when you can look at it that way, that's how you unpack awful situations or confronting situations, and you look for the lesson in them. And if you don't figure out the freaking lessons you're meant to learn in this lifetime, you will just keep getting them. That's it. That is it.
And then, Danica, there are other patterns like baiting. Narcissistic people love a fight. And so you're thinking, why do they say things just to get me worked up? I'm like, to get you worked up.
They do. It's like it would be like their narcissistic supply. I feel like the drama, the chaos, the anger, the fear, the sadness that comes out of you is their supply. Like once there's no more reaction anymore, they aren't getting supply. It's like they just need energy.
Mm-hmm. They not only need energy, but they also need this, which is superiority. So let's say you've generally well put together, they bait you and you're like, and you take the bait. Now you're like, ah! You're screaming and yelling. And now the narcissist actually calms down almost instantly. Your madness completely calms them down. It's like a tranquilizer for them. And they're like, goodness, isn't somebody getting a little worked up? You're a little crazy. You need to calm down. And that's gaslighting, because now you've been painted as this thing you're not, but you have literally been baited. So it's about training yourself to not take the bait.